3, 4.
Hello and welcome to C# Programming on .NET. My name is Brett Robley and I teach at Cal State University Fullerton. The class is ISDS 309. In this video lecture, I'm going to deal with methods. I'm going to introduce certain aspects of methods from Chapter 7 and Chapter 8 of Joyce Farrell's Visual C# Programming. Let's open up Visual Studio and let's create a new project. Make it a console application and we'll name it methods. In this video I'm going to take the array program from the previous chapter, array part 2, and I'm going to demonstrate how to convert some of the code to methods. Now in my comment header I say that I'm going to package statements together and give it a name. That's essentially what a method is. Methods have many different names. They're called subroutines, procedures, functions, etc. Now I'm going to paste over the template code and I'm going to put the entire array2 code into this program. Now what I'm doing here is I'm taking the argument processing code and I'm copying it or cutting it, and I'm replacing it with a single invocation to a method called command line args. Now at the end of the static main method, but before the end of the class, I'm going to create a new method, static void command line args, and I'm going to paste in all of the argument handling code. Now you see red squiggly lines pop up everywhere, but I don't care. Notice that I have command line args called there. I'm going to go ahead and start. I've got errors, and the very first error is all I care about. Use of unassigned bool variable n, or I'm sorry, local variable. So I'm going to set n equal to 0 so that it's initialized and the compiler won't complain about that. And now I'm going to run the program again. And I'm only going to look at the first message. I don't care about the others. The name args does not exist in the current context. Well, that's because I look at the line number 90. So when I look down there, I see that args is referenced inside of command line args. So I need to make sure that I pass a parameter into command line args so that it has visibility to the command line args string array. And while I'm at it, I'm going to put a int n in there because I want to pass n that's up there on line 37. I want to make sure that I'm passing in that variable so that we can set n to the number of records we want to generate, or number of array elements. Okay, so I run it again, and now it says since program command line args returns void, a return keyword must not be followed by an object expression. Well, yeah, I have returns in here that we copied down, so I'm going to change void to int, and that should solve that problem. Now I'm going to try and run it again, and I'm just going to look at the very first error. Okay, program command line args, not all code paths return a value. Well, since I changed it from void to int, I got to make sure that after my else construct, I'm returning a 0 for success. Great, that should take care of that. Let's try and run it again. And sure enough, it runs. But we generated 0 records. And that's interesting a little bit. We initialized n to 0 and then I passed it in. So of course it's going to be 0. But right here, it should set n equal to 20. The problem is that I passed a copy of n and I need to pass the reference to n so that it can actually update the integer n that is outside of the command line args method. So in order to reach back outside of the method call, I need to pass it in as a ref. So I put the ref keyword in front of the invocation call, and I also put it in front of the method signature, or in the method signature. Okay, so now I want to take some code that I've identified as repetitive, and I want to simplify the main method. So I'm going to cut this out and I'm going to invent a new method called display message. And I'm going to then um, declare a new static method after the static method main. It returns nothing, display message, and I'm going to paste in the code that makes up the body. Now I'm going to go ahead and run it, and we have errors. When I look at the errors, it says the name n does not exist in the current context. And that's at line 80 or so, 89. Okay, so I've referenced n at line 89, but I'm going to cut this line out because I only printed that message the very first time through, and so that's going to be an exception. I'm going to put it right after I build the array. And then I'm going to put a read line in so that we can stop and see how many records did we actually generate. Now, when we run the code, we should be able to see that come out if I don't have errors. Okay, so there it is. Generated 20 numbers. I hit enter, and now we see all of the different displays. So now, display message is defined as a method, and so I'm going to remove these other repetitive lines, and I'm going to call display message instead. So this is where I'm making multiple function calls so that I don't have to carry all this code in multiple places. Now I'm going to run it. Okay, unsorted unless by chance. Unsorted unless by chance. Well, that's wrong. So obviously I need to change something because that message should change each time I hit enter. And the way to do that is to pass in the message that we want displayed. So I'm going to create a string parameter called MSG. I'm going to cut out the literal message, and I'm going to put in message the parameter. So now we can update the call to display message with the literal message that we want to pass through. And I'll do it here. And of course I need to update the lingo. That loud noise you just heard was me receiving email, apparently. I apologize for that. Okay, so now I'm going to run this again. Well, actually, let me cut this last one out, and I'll replace this third one as well. Might as well do it all at once instead of making you wait. Okay, notice in line 72 I've got lowercase sorted, so I'm going to have to go back and fix that. Okay, so I've generated the records. Now you see unsorted unless by chance. Now you see sorted ascending order. Now you see sorted descending order. So I've abstracted my display message by allowing other programmers to pass in a literal string, and it will adjust the message based on that. Okay, so now it looks like I'm repetitive a few times by way of printing the array with the for each loop and displaying the message. So I'm going to grab those lines and I'm going to create a display array function. And I'll go down and I'll declare it as a static method, static void display array. Oh my gosh, another email. Okay, so now I'm going to run it. I've got errors, and the problem now says that the name array of ints does not exist in the current context. Well, that's because I moved the code inside of display array, and it doesn't know about array events. So I'm going to set up a parameter and show you how to pass an array. Okay, so the name in main is array of ints. I will put that in the parentheses to the call to display array, and then here I'm going to create integer array, and I'm going to change the name. I'm going to call it array so it's known by a different name inside this method. That's also valid to do. Okay, so now let's see if this runs. Okay, now we're running again. All right, so why don't I go ahead and replace the others? So I'll just copy this and I will go replace the two other areas where we have identical code. All the while I'm shrinking the main method. We'll run it and see if this worked. I just decided I'm going to cut that big comment out so I can make main even less cluttered. I'm going to move it down into the static method display array. And that way we retain this good information about what does an array look like, but we don't have it cluttering up the main method. Okay, so it looks like we're working. Got the right method. Uh-oh, we've got the wrong message. Wrong message. Okay, so now we're printing the same message 3 times, and we've got to fix that. So again, like in display message, we're now going to go to display array, and we're going to excerpt out the literal messages, and we're going to allow ourselves to pass in a second parameter called string space message. And then now in the invocation we put a comma, we pass it array events, and we also pass it the literal message that we want displayed when we run the program. Okay, we have some errors. There's no argument given that corresponds. Okay, since I updated, look at 57. Since I updated the method signature, the other two calls to display array are now complaining that they don't have the right number of parameters. So I'll go ahead and I'll put in the literal message that belongs on those two. So the first one is sorted, ascending order, and then I'll move down to the second one. There we go. I'll make a copy of this. I'll move down to the second, or actually the third one, the last one. And, darn it. I put it in the wrong one. Let me fix the descending here. Let me go back and fix that. There we go. All right, down here on display array, not on array.reverse. Okay, now I need to change that to descending order. All right, let's give this a try. Okay, generated the records, unsorted unless by chance, sorted ascending order, sorted descending order. Great. So that's working. Now I'm going to collapse this down to one line. Again, I'm trying to get main nice and compact, easy to understand as you read through it, getting rid of extra spaces, but not all spaces because we want it to have some structure. Okay, so run it again to make sure I didn't break anything. Okay, we're looking good. So now, to pass parameters, we need to open up the Solution Explorer, open up Properties, go to the Debug tab, and then right here we'll put in 500, and we'll generate 500 messages by sensing that there is a command line parameter that we're passing in. So there go the 500 messages. They're sorted and ascending, sorted and descending, so that worked great. Let's go back and let's add a second parameter to see if my code handles this appropriately. So I'm going to start the program, and sure enough, I have too many parameters and it tells me how I'm supposed to invoke it upstairs there. But notice it didn't end the program. It went through the rest of the program using zeros. We'll go back and fix that. So since when I was returning 1 in the command line argument code, and it was in the main method, it would return to the operating system. But now that we pushed it down to its own method, it just returns to main. Okay, so here's an example where a negative integer was passed, and then we break the code because we pushed a bunch of stuff down into a function. And so we have to come up with a better way to handle this. So what I'm going to do is, instead of returning to main, when I sense an error, I'm going to call environment.exit. I'm going to change command line args to void because we're not going to return a value. We're going to actually return to the operating system. And we are returning a value to the operating system, but not from command line args. And so I'm going to change each of these instances to environment.exit. I'm going to remove, well, let me get this in here first, getting ahead of myself. I'm going to remove the return 0 because, again, I changed command line args from returning an int to returning a void. Now, when we run the program and we sense an error, then when we hit enter, it exits the program back to the operating system. So lastly, I'm going to put in a non-number just to test that code, make sure that that code's handling non-numbers. Sure enough, a non-integer parameter was passed. And we're good. At this point, the only thing left to do is to go back to 100 or whatever and just show that everything's working great. And that's how we deal with methods. Thanks for watching.